Welcome to this episode of Our Voices, Our Hopes. Today, we're speaking with Mike Solomon, Chief Operating Officer of PhD North America, one of the units of Omnicom Media Group. Welcome, Mike. So happy to have you join us today.
Thanks, Rita. Thanks for the opportunity to chat today. Wonderful what we're doing with the Boys and Girls Club of Puerto Rico, and just happy to be chatting.
Well, we're so glad to have you. So Mike, tell us a little bit about your journey as a person of color in the industry. What would you like to share with us about your experiences, the value of mentors, and dealing with issues of bias in your career and in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rita. And really for me, just like most people of color, I think is when I think of the industry and just think of what we've gone through, we've had a lot of the same experiences, right? So, being the only person of color on my team, no representation in leadership, loneliness, joining new organizations is always something I think that kind of comes to the forefront in terms of really thinking about my experience. But I think I've been fairly lucky, right? So, I think it's fairly rare, and Rita, you know this, I've been at Omnicom for about 16 years. I'm a little bit of a unicorn when it comes to time spent and just really, diving into kind of this issue and just these things within Omnicom has been great. It's been a great journey. My biggest focus over the course of the last couple of years has really been just in one kind of critical area, because I think that, my time has been spent a lot on just building teams and thinking about what it takes to really service clients the right way. And there's that term, cultural fit or client fit. And I think that in itself is something that I think has been somewhat limiting in terms of how we've built teams and how we think about diversity and inclusion inside of organizations. So, my journey has been completely eyes wide open, had some great mentors and some great kind of allies. And I do like what's happening in the industry right now, where mentors and allies and just folks that are looking out for how we get ahead are really at the forefront in terms of not just helping a few, but helping all. And I think that's the next big shift that we're all really kind of headed towards.
That's great. I totally agree. And on that point, I think the agency industry has really made tremendous strides in creating a more diverse workforce. How would you say that's going in your opinion? And what do you think still needs to happen?
Great question. I had a client back in the day who used to say, never best, always better. And I like that expression, and really thinking about, the action over the last year. There's really, I think it's great that it's part of the conversation. I think, it's great, some of the work and some of the kind of pushes that are happening right now, but there's just always work to be done. And I think that, up until this point, we've used a lot of the same mechanisms to, really go at the kind of diversity within the workforce. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of it has been really just focused on support and support systems. What I love, and this is really what's starting to kind of happen for me, being within, Omnicom and moving into my new role at PhD about 5 months ago, is it's really given me an opportunity to really think about, as we start to redefine kind of PhD in our overall approach to the market, how can we really be at the forefront of really thinking about, diversity and inclusion at the core of our agency, and actually making it one of the pillars that we really start to kind of build ourselves on. So I'm excited what we're doing. I think that when it comes to, broadening it out, thinking about how we source talent, thinking about how we, support people that are inside the organization so that they feel like they have safe spaces and places where they can actually communicate effectively with those around them. How we really think about our business goals and how they're tied to these diversity metrics, and really how do we start to involve our clients in that discussion, right? I think that's a key piece.
It absolutely is. So let's talk a little bit about multicultural marketing. Multicultural marketing has been around a long time, but as a specialty practice, what has changed, and what are the needs of your clients to reach a more diverse population?
This is a huge passion of mine. Having grown up on some of the businesses and some of the things that I've done, I think one of the big changes, Rita, is really what I've seen even in the pitch process over the course of the last 6 to 9 months is, multicultural thinking and kind of innovation is really now front and center. You're seeing that kind of really come to fruition in terms of how clients are thinking about it. But having had that benefit, I think the really interesting thing here is the things that we had or done for multicultural marketers in the past, which is buying against these multicultural audiences and creating specific creative for audiences, I think is really just table stakes now, right? I think if we're really embracing this and we're really thinking about where this is all headed, at PhD, we've actually pivoted to really start to make multicultural thinking and really cultural thinking more of a business imperative. And by that I mean really trying to tie it closer to where clients' growth is going to come from. I think that's a much more interesting conversation as opposed to investments that we're making against these audiences. So I like this pivot where we're trying to think about it bigger and broader, making it bigger than marketing. And it's really how you start to think about overall, not only the culture and kind of that connection point that we have for our clients, but also what it means to the agency, right? And how that becomes a little bit of everything that we do.
I love that. I love that notion of tying it to growth, because that's something that resonates with everyone. So a client of mine and yours, one that you've worked on a long time, McDonald's, one of my favorites. What are some of the lessons you can share with marketers like McDonald's around reaching diverse audiences? Although they've done an extraordinary job, but I'm sure that's because of your leadership with them. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship?
When I think back to the days on McDonald's and just working with great partners like you, I think there's a couple of things that really come to mind. And first is when I really think about it, brands that don't treat it like marketing, that really know that it's a part of their identity and everything that they do, they tend to be the ones that get it. And I think that McDonald's and Clorox and some of the ones that I've just been able to touch over the last couple of years really get that lean in to not only their owner operators and the extent of McDonald's, but their customers and where growth is going to come from, is really kind of that differentiator. And I think it's also important to think that you can't just be there only when it's about the celebrations, right, or the good times that are kind of happening in terms of celebrating these audiences, but also you have to be there for the issues, right, and really get ingrained in local community activity and just things that are kind of happening that are beyond just kind of the marketing world. So I've learned a couple of things, and it's been really great to kind of see the progression through the industry in the sense of some of these marketers like McDonald's that have been out ahead, and now you're starting to kind of see some brands that are really starting to kind of pick up steam. And I've learned you got to have a real long-term outlook, really thinking about multicultural marketing and really big swaths of time, right? So how you invest now so that you're impacting things 5 to 6 years down the road, and really looking for those kind of commonalities and that context that really matters in terms of how you connect with your customers, I think is critical for brands. And we're starting to really rethink a lot of this work, and just coming from my 5 months at PhD, seeing that we have brands like VW and Google and Diageo that are really starting to embrace some of these same things that we're really learning from clients around the network. So great progress that's been done. Yes, we need to pivot, and I think we're as long as we're playing for the long game, I think we're all going to be in good shape.
I totally agree. I love the notion of context matters, because the way you tell a story and where you tell it matters, and being in the communities for sure. When we think about communities of diverse backgrounds, I definitely think that's important. So about that, what are some of the strategies that you employ in reaching diverse audiences, and does data and technology really play an important pivotal role in that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think data and technology has been great in the sense of advancements that we've made in media, right? But it's also uncovered some bias. And I think that, we all know that there's certain bias that kind of exists within data. But I think there's a right way to kind of think about it, right? And so for us, it's really about using data to really understand audiences and context. And that feels like that's a great fit, right? It's we're using it to really inform ourselves in terms of like where we're headed. When you use data to hit, traditional multicultural media metrics, or things around reaching a specific audience and kind of making it more about that, it doesn't feel so great, right? So I think what I really am excited about in terms of kind of the use of data is really leading with audience insight, leading with really understanding what the context of kind of those audiences and those people that you're trying to reach, and thinking about, as I said before, really that long game, right? So how do we invest now to impact the business more broadly later? And also at the same time, how do we start to think about your overall business growth kind of objectives that come from thinking about it in that way? And I think that that's then what takes it out of it just being a marketing initiative, and really how it starts to impact other things that are happening within your business.
For sure. So one last question that I think is really more personal, I would say, than business related. But as you look to the future, what are some of the hopes you have for your industry and for society around greater inclusion and tolerance?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking. I've been reading the Obama's latest book, and there's a huge focus when you think about his journey on his optimism, right, and how it's always been tied throughout his career, really rooted in kind of the faith in future generations, right? So really thinking about the kind of the context of that and how it's applicable to what we really do in a day-to-day basis. I'm really excited about our space becoming a real destination occupation for people of color, right? So if we're really thinking about doing this the right way, it has to be where we're thinking about how we're setting up this next generation to really take the reins and start to really drive impactful change in ways that we've pushed on, but maybe haven't gotten all the way there. And so, I spend a lot of time with friends and family and young folks that are coming up in the industry, and do as much as I can in terms of mentoring. And I think the connotation right now is it's not really a great feeling that they have about really the advertising space or the media space. There's a little bit of a negative connotation there. So I really think kind of the leaning into the future, leaning into what is going to change some of those perceptions for the long term, I think is really critical. And I'm an optimist. This conversation has been really great, I think, over the last year. And I'm really excited that it really hasn't died down. I think, knowing where we were a year ago and where this currently sits, it's exciting to think where we're going to head, just knowing how live this discussion still is and just how much work we have to do.
Totally. Thank you, Mike, for first of all, your optimism, and secondly, your transparency. It's great to hear.
Thanks, Rita. Great to see you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching this episode of Our Voices and Our Hopes, a series produced by BTV for the benefit of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Puerto Rico. I'm hoping you will join Disney in supporting this wonderful organization. And to find out more, visit bgcpr.org. Thank you.